Hello and welcome to another INF 124 video, Intro to Web Programming. Today we're going to talk about the JavaScript game that we have been working on. It's going to be Module 10 Exercise 2, and it might change if you're watching this video past this semester, this spring semester. Basically, this is called the mole game. What we're going to do is today we're going to learn how to download the code, explain the game, we're going to explain the code, we're going to program a button, and we're also going to explain a secondary way of programming this. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's start by downloading the exercise. So if you click here, we're going to go ahead and download this, and we are going to extract this program onto our desktop. So I'm going to go ahead and click extract, and it is on our desktop now. So now that we've extracted it, let's kind of explain the game a little bit. So this is kind of the end goal of the game right here. We have 9 boxes. Each box has the whole point of the game is to select a box, and if that box has a person behind it, then you lose the game, or the game stops, and you get X number of points, as you can see at the bottom. If you run into a dancing pig, then you get a point. If you run into a man, the game ends, and that's how many points you get. Now I have this 8 and 0 right here, just to kind of show you guys briefly what the man's position is and if the game is still running. So the 8 signifies that the person is in box 8, and it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So this is box 8, and the game is 0. The 0 means that the game is currently running. So if I go ahead and click on the first button, we get a pig, and then we get a point. So I click on another button, we hit another pig, so we get another point. Now if we run into the man, all of a sudden this 0 turns into a 1, saying, hey, this game's over. The person has 2 points, and they can't select any more of these buttons. Okay, so let's go ahead and refresh this and do it again. So 1 point. Oops. Okay. Give me 1 second. Here we go. So, if you look right here, we have the person is in box number 6, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the person is in this box. If I click here, I get 1 point. I can click all of these except for the last one, and that's when the game ends. So the maximum number of points is 8. So if we refresh this again, the person is in 5. And one thing to note, the only reason I have these showing up is to demonstrate the game. When you download this game, initially those 2 boxes are hidden. So I'll show you how to unhide them so you can see exactly where the person's at when you're testing. There you go. Okay. So now that we've explained the game, let's go ahead and explain the code a little bit. So this is the code I've provided to you guys. It's a basic HTML page with some JavaScript at the bottom. Not much JavaScript yet. That's the whole objective of this assignment, is to just write JavaScript to make this game work. So let's briefly explain the HTML portion of it. So as soon as this page loads, it calls this JavaScript function. So this body tag, when the page loads, it calls this rand generator function, and that's a JavaScript function. So in order for us to find out what that function does, we have to scroll down to the JavaScript section. And here's the function right here. So this function, we are defining a variable. random number, and we're setting it equal to 1 or to 0. We're setting it just blankly to 0. We are then generating a random number using the math.floor function and the math.random. So it's a random number between 0 and 8. And good news is all our images are from 0 to 8. 0 to 8. Okay. So we now get a random number, and what we are then doing is setting it to an element. So the random number, this label right here, is initially hidden. We can delete that and have it unhidden so that we can see what the value is that this is generating. But I don't have that initially programmed in for you guys. So what this is doing is it's setting this label right here to whatever the random number is. So we'll go ahead and click run. So here's our 5. So the person is in box number 5. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the person is in this box right here. But as you can see, none of these buttons work. The only button that does work is this first one right here. So we're going to have to program each of these other buttons. And that's the whole point of this exercise. So now that we've set the label to our random number, or basically saved our random number inside that label, we can then go down to this line of code, and basically this is telling the functions that, hey, this game is still in session. The user has not hit the person image, so the game is still running. And then we're also defining a points label, basically right here. So this label right here, points, is being initially set to 0. Same with the game running. When the game running hits 1, as you can see down in this code, we'll go over that later, the game ends and no buttons can be clicked. Okay, so we have explained this line of code. So then what we did is we built a table. It's a 3x3 table. We have 9 buttons, 0 through 8, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And each one of these buttons has an onClick function. What this onClick does is when someone clicks this button, it calls this JavaScript code. So if we scroll down to this JavaScript code, this function, it then checks, the first thing it does is using this function, it pulls the game running value label, which is hidden. It says, hey, is this game running? Does running equal 0? If it does, then we're going to go into this next if statement. And this next if statement kind of runs the same function, where it checks the random number and it says, hey, is the person in image 0? If he is, then it sets the image 0 from a whole to a person. So basically what happens is this image, source's whole, gets changed to the source equals person.jpg. And if you can see, this is the person.jpg, this is the whole.jpg. So once it does that, it then changes the game running state from 0 to 1, meaning no other buttons can now be pressed. Okay, so that's if the random number generator generated a 0. If, however, the random number generator generated a 1 through 9 or 1 through 8, then it's going to run this portion of the code once we click the button. So we click the button, it comes down here, the game's still running, and what it does is it then checks random number, and it says, hey, is random number 0? Let's assume random number is 5. So this statement is false. Therefore, we're going down to this else statement. Inside this else statement, we are then going to check. We're then going to set image 0 to the mole.gif. So we're going to change this image to this on that button. Okay? We are then going to increment the points. So we're using this function right here. We're going to set the points number, and we're going to basically add whatever's in the points value. So let's assume it's 0. It's going to take 0 right here. It's going to substitute this function for 0 because that's currently what points is, and it's going to add 1 to it and then set that equal to the points. So we're going to have 1 point. If we had 3 points, this function right here will get substituted with the number 3. And we're going to have 3 plus 1 equals 4, and it's going to set the points to 4. So, in order to program this, in order to program the other 8 buttons, what we have to do is we have to create another function for each one of these images. And the function is defined as check image 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8. So let's go ahead and write our code for function check image 1. So we kind of start off the same way. Function check image 1. We're then going to add brackets because we want this code to reside inside this function. We're then going to do our if statement. If, and this if statement is going to check, is the game running? So we're going to set the document.get element by ID game running, and then we want to do inner HTML, which what that does is it pulls the value that's currently in get running, and we're going to check to see if get running equals 0. We're then going to add a bracket because we want some code inside of this if statement. So we have then checked, is game running? If it's 0, then it is running. So inside here, we're going to add another if statement. Now we are checking checking the random number to make sure. I'm just going to shortcut that. We're going to check to see if that random number is in box number 1. Random number, make sure I spelled that right. Dot inner HTML, and we want to check to see if the random number is 1. Because if it is, then the person is in this box. So let's go ahead and then check. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. We have just checked it. Now we've proven that inside of this code, we're going to say, okay, we now know random number is 1 if we're executing this inside of this if statement. So we then need to change the image on button or image. Let me backtrack. We're going to have to change image 1 to the person. So the source equals person dot JPEG. And then we put a semicolon, and we also have to set the game state to 0 because we don't want anyone getting extra points. Game running dot inner HTML equals 1. All right, so we've added the code that we needed for the if the random number is equal to 1. If the person is in image button 1. So next what we do is we add another else statement. And let me make that a little cleaner so it's better to read and better to troubleshoot. So for this next section, we have determined that the person is not in this random box, is not in this box 1. So we then need to change the image to, we want to change image 1 to the mole, because we know that the person is not in this button. Then we want to add points to the person score. All right, so we have the base of our code done for image 1. So if we go ahead and click save and click run, now we can check to see if this works. So if we click the button, we notice that this button does not work. So, which is okay. What we can do is we can then click inspect, and we can go over to the console. And if you notice, there's an uncaught error. Let me actually refresh this. That way we can clear that. So if I click this button, all of a sudden you notice that, hey, something's wrong with this. There's an error. So if we go to line 98 of our HTML code, we can see what the error is. So line 98. So this line right here, there's something wrong with this line. And I spelled that wrong. Yep, there's a misspelling right there. So doesn't matter how long you've been programming, you're gonna have spelling issues. If you're like me, I guess. I have typos all the time, so now we can click this button and yay, it works. So that was just a little troubleshooting example. So if we go ahead and click inspect, again, the way I got to this is through the console, and I can click one of these other buttons and we get an error saying check image 2 is not defined. If we go back to our code, we don't have check image 2 defined. And that's correct. We haven't made it to programming that button yet. So just kind of a heads up, it's very easy to, it should help troubleshoot. The console should. So let's go ahead and we'll just go ahead and define check image 2. We won't have it do anything. So if I click that button, inspect, go to console, we no longer have that error. Now we obviously have errors everywhere else, but check image 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, it's because we haven't defined those yet. So the big thing is being able to, once you do your code, once you write a button, once you program a button, the big thing is to just go in and check it, make sure it's running correctly, make sure it's behaving the way you expect it to behave. I'm just going to go ahead and refresh this until we get a random number at 2. Let's try and get it at 1. Okay, so the random number is at 1. That means the person is behind button number 1. So if we click here, we get the person. That's exactly what we were expecting. So, and everything else works. So we have buttons 0 and 1 programmed correctly. And I'm going to go ahead and let you guys program the rest of your buttons. If you guys have any questions, please email me. One thing I want to cover real quick, we're programming it this way, but this is technically not the correct way of programming it. It's just an easier way of programming it for a first advanced program. If you guys want to play around and make this program a lot more advanced, you can actually make these checkImage0, checkImage1 functions. All these, you'll have to have checkImage0 through 8. You can have all of those be one function. And the way you do that is you set up an array. So what would happen is you'd set up an array. Each one of these buttons would have one function call. And you would pass 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on which button you're at, to the function. And then inside that function, you can then specify, okay, which image am I at? And you can use a for loop for that to check to see which image you're at, and if the mole is at that image, then you would, if the mole is at that image, you do this. If the person's at the image, you would do this. So, and you would have this program, you'd use the array again for this. So if you have any questions about that or want to dig in deeper into this, please let me know. If not, I will let you program it this way. So again, any questions, please email me. I'd be more than happy to answer any of them. Thank you for your time and have a good day.